Hi, this video is about a fictitious computer that was in a video game that contained a fictitious office. Counter-Strike source includes a model based on real-world components, but altered just enough that there wouldn't be any copyrights or trademarks that would cause problems, at least an attempt at it. And I'm seeking one of the items, the power supply. The icon for it will be used for the video. I need the high-res images. I need more. So anyway, here we go. What was the Beefy Computer in the video game that's also used in a bunch of Gary mods, Gmod videos you see on YouTube? What was in the Beefy Computer? Well, the literal objects in it don't have to mesh or match. They don't have to fit together, although someday I will, as a joke, build a Beefy Computer if the parts are still available. Here we go. 2004 is the year all of these parts did exist at. And Counter-Strike, the source version, came out about the time. So here's what's in it. The oldest component, potentially, a Cooler Master CPU fan. These are generic. You get one that's a Cooler Master for some other processor and just scale it up. But if it was made for the processor that would be in the motherboard that's depicted, it would have been a pretty, well, beefy heatsink and fan. I don't have the exact make, model, and year for it, and the thing is, looking these up is very hard. They're just scaled up or down fans. They're kind of a generic size, put onto whatever heatsink works. So the company, Cooler Master, made these by just redesigning them for every processor on the market and then sticking basically the same type of fan on them. But that's 1998. 1998 also was the first year you got the DDR2 or DDR 184-pin DIMM memory sticks. That isn't necessarily what it is, but some of the other parts limit it to that. And yes, even though the case doesn't match the board that's shown in it, there is, some people have actually found variations of it that worked. The Microsoft Explorer USB Intellimouse existed in 1999 forward, so they're pretty easy to get. Having no cable on it would mean that you altered it by putting a small battery in it and a USB-based adaptation or circuit, or even just a Bluetooth in it, but you could obviously just leave the cable on it. The main thing, the box of it, is a clamshell computer case, meaning it isn't going to work the way you might think it would, for a Dell Dimension 4000 or 8000 series. It could be either of them. Most people quote the 8000 and then quote the 4000 in an argument. It doesn't matter. They're basically a similar case that were used for the same things. I've worked on these before. You could interchange previous or current, but these were put out the same year, 2002. The IBM Deskstar or Deskstar 120 GXP was an 80 gigabyte hard drive, and that's actually what's depicted in it. I have no reason to argue with every other geek's conclusion. It's an 80 gig or thereabouts hard drive. Now, the images of these things are fairly blurry, but you can tell from looking at where the text is positioned. The problem with a lot of this hardware is it's too unique not to find out exactly what it is. There could be others that are similar. There could be one that was made that was larger or smaller that has the same sort of juxtaposition, but the most common ones that fit were the 80 gig IBM Deskstar. You can read about the disaster that was on Wikipedia articles. 2002 Logitech-Internet-Navigator number 3 mouse. It's a keyboard. It's a USB keyboard, and it had the ID code that is most commonly cited as Y-BE22. Now, there are others that look similar to it. In fact, a lot of others, because the company kept putting out ones that were similar to that in their Navigator keyboard series. But that's the most likely one, 2002. The 2003 ATI Radeon 9800 Pro is not got much variation to it. It's a 128 megabyte DDR 256-bit video card, and it was considered high-end at the time. And then it had a Sound Blaster Audigy PCI sound card, probably the Audigy Player. In fact, Wikipedia shows that specific card as the thumbnail for all of the Audigies in the upper right-hand corner when you open the thing currently. Finding the exact specs for the player, is almost impossible because it was one in a series of them. Basically, it was a cut-down version of the Pro version that had an external breakout box so you could use it to run a bunch of equipment. The Dell monitor for it could be a 15 or 17-inch monitor that ends in with an ID code of 1505 or 1704 FP. And it was just that monitor. It had a round stick stand with a half-moon shaped bottom that's open ring type. It's very distinctive and very... The reason it was picked is because it's cool looking at the time. The next thing is that it had a 2004 AMD Athlon 64 3000 or 4000 CPU. Now that could be anywhere in the range, but it would hover around the 2 gigahertz to whatever range. And then the motherboard, which is the most significant part that would limit what you could plug into it. And yes, again, some of the Dell parts would have been able to transfer out, and you might have been, one of the versions of this board is able to be jam fit in there. You have to unscrew some things and you can get it to work. It's called fish plating, at least that's what we called it at the shop I was in. It's an ASUS A8V Deluxe board. And it has a bunch of specs on it. But anyway, it's a socket 939 motherboard. Now, there are other variations of this, but this is the most likely one, and that's 2004. And the optical disk drive, this is something I was able to find maybe the original image of off of a website that sells them. It's an IBM LG 40-speed optical disk drive. It's a 5 1/4 bay IDE-based one with a phone jack in front, a volume control, and an eject button. And the little status light, and it still had the paperclip insert where you'd get the mechanical ejector to work by shoving a paperclip in there if it ever jammed, because that was still a problem. And that's a year 2000 Y2K-based drive. Now, the reason I was able to check on that, I'll put up the image comparison. It's almost exactly the same image. Even though it's heavily, heavily pixelated, the position of the pixels match only literally an IBM rebranded LG drive. I'll do a much more exhaustive lookup. Now we're at the point where we're at the last component not identified. It's a something technology branded computer power supply. I've held one of these in my hands, and it starts with A, and it's like 4 or 5 characters long for the name, and I can't remember what it stood for. It's too low resolution. If anybody can find someone who has a copy of Counter-Strike Source and can extract the images, that's good. I've also found a couple of pages listed below on how to manually just download the game and extract the files so you can try to look at them. They're just compressed PNG files or JPEGs. They're used for the textures for making the object. Now, how long did I spend on this? This is the second time I've decided to start doing this video. And the funny thing is, the original time I tried to start doing it and then threw it away as an idea because I couldn't find most of the information being consistently responded to, was because the only thing I could find was the power supply. I knew the name of the company. I had it written down. I had a file on it. It's gone. That's the one thing I don't have right now. And about 4 years ago or something, I was able to find that first thing, but I couldn't find the other stuff to confirm it because I needed to see pictures of these parts. And now, Wikipedia uses the exact sound card as a representative of the entire group of sound cards, and I found the actual image that may have been used to make the image of the visual disk drive, the optical disk drive. Hell, I even found people deliberately selling some of the stuff on eBay for people who wanted to put together their own beefy PC, including, yes, of course, somebody did this with a 3D printer, making their own beefy PC round button to put on the side, on each side of your Dell computer to completely alter it. There are even people selling gutted versions of it that have been altered so you can stick in the ASUS motherboard on purpose. Yeah, there's weirdos like me out there. So, that's going to be all of it, but I have a list of computer hardware manufacturers by alphabetic list, the list of computer system manufacturers alphabetical, the Securities and Exchange Commission, government files and rules on listing the company names, list of PC manufacturers, list of computer brands, trade loops list by alphabetical, starting with A. I can't find the power supply name. If anybody recognizes the icon, I'll probably put it up for the video. I don't know. But anyhow, the most satisfying thing was being able to find out not just generally what CD-ROM it was, but finding out that it was in November. Yeah, you can check the length of the little smudges on the compressed JPEG image to figure out what month it might have been. It was probably November. That's how precisely we can get information if we want to, if we really work at it. Thanks to literally everybody listed below in the description and all the links. I've got Wikipedia listings and a ton of people like SeriousGMod.com, Game Banana, every geek out there that's into this stuff. So if you were wondering how to build your own Beefy computer, I called it a Beefy PC. That's what I used this instead. It's 2.4 gigahertz for the processor, 4 gigabytes for the RAM, 80 gigabytes for the hard drive. It's a 2004 era arrangement of parts that was possible and could technically be shoehorned together. And, very importantly, by the way, there were 2 of the hard drives, so it was 160 gigs total. But we only count, when we're doing specs, the 1 boot drive. And yes, it was a Deskstar, IBM Deskstar, self-destructing hard drive. And last and very, very importantly, I was about to say, yeah, no one in their right mind would ever have a computer with shitty specs like this. I mean, I wouldn't. And then I looked at my own specs on my computer. Mine's running at nearly 3 gigahertz, but it's almost identical performance characteristics. I just have a 250 gigabyte hard drive jammed in the other side, into the second slot. So, yeah. So I can't even. I probably would build this if I had the parts immediately and show you. So if you want to build one, there's the parts list and the stuff. And none of the stuff was made after the year 2004 or 2005 that would be exactly right. And yes, some of these you can get slightly updated versions and jack it up from like 2 gigabytes of RAM to 4 gigabytes to 8 gigabytes. The most likely one, because there's only 2 sticks of RAM, would be 2 gigabytes. So mine's only running 4 right now, somehow. How did I screw up my laptop that bad? I think I blew out one of the memory chips. Thanks for watching. Have a good day, and good luck.